So much had happened in his life so far. So many ups and downs, unbelievable successes to the worst kinds of failure that led to the brink of catastrophe. But a life is a journey, and it is the twists and turns and ups and downs that sometimes lead a person to a point in their lives where they are exactly where they want to be. This was where Pat Falvey wanted to be, high up on the slopes of Mount Everest, in Camp 2 on the north side, waiting for his turn to push on for the summit. But once again, fate would intervene, and the dream of climbing Everest seemed like it would remain just that, a dream. However, it is amazing where dedication, grit and determination, plus a healthy dose of what we in Ireland might call in a positive way, the thickness, can take you. How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the latest episode of the Why the Mountains podcast with me, your host, Stephen Farley. If you are a hill walker or a mountaineer, or just someone with a love for stories of adventure, this is the podcast for you. In this first series, we are exploring the history of Irish mountaineers on Everest, from the earliest pioneering days right up to the latest commercial ascents. If you haven't listened to our earlier podcasts, I suggest you do that first, before continuing with this latest episode, looking at the life of Pat Falvey, a truly unique person, and a man who has achieved amazing things in the mountains. Over the next 3 episodes, we go on a journey with Pat, from his childhood growing up in Cork City in Ireland, through his successes and failures in business, falling in love with the mountains at a relatively late age, to achieving his dream on the highest peaks of the planet. I hope you enjoy this journey, and many thanks to Pat for his hospitality in the amazing mountain lodge just outside Killarney in County Kerry, his cups of tea, and his generosity with his time, and for agreeing to share his amazing story. Enjoy. I began the interview with Pat by asking him, as we always do, why the mountains?
Well, the mountains for me signified peace and tranquility. And I suppose in my earlier years, I wasn't into the mountains. And after I tried to take my life through suicide, someone asked me to come and climb a small mountain here in Kerry called Mangerton. And I was a workaholic up to that. And for therapy and to get off Prozac, I went for a walk. And on going for the walk, it's the first time I felt at peace. At the age of 29, I could for the first time hear the water cascading off the mountain, heading to the lakes of Killarney. I could see the greens and the grasses. And in actual fact, that day that I went, I didn't want to go. But when I got to the summit, of Mangerton, I got so excited that I had achieved a small success in my life because everything had gone wrong for about a year. It was therapeutic, and it got me away from the hustle and bustle of modern day life. And then I wanted to go to climb Carntool, Ireland's highest mountain. I didn't even know what it was at the time. And this father, a secretary of mine, asked me to go. Following week, the banks were trying to take our family home from us. I got to the top of Carntool. I was so excited. I was jumping up and down with elation at the fact that I've achieved a success. And for me, that time, that was my Everest. And I turned to Val and said, I'm going to climb Mount Everest. But why? Why? It was because of my mental health, the journey of the mountains. They have become, as Anatoly Bukharov would have said, they have become my cathedrals. It's where I go to pray. I've had over 185 now of high altitude treks and expeditions around the world. And indeed, my favorite mountain here is on Carntool. Probably climbed it about 2,500 times with over 30,000 people. And sometimes I would have climbed it 3 times a day for therapy.
It was clear listening to Pat that climbing Mangerton, an 838-metre mountain in East Kerry, a county in Ireland's southwest, famous for its mountain ranges and natural beauty, was a transformative experience. I asked him if, growing up in Cork City, the mountains were something he always had an interest in.
There was no interest in mountains. It was an interest in work. I went to live with my grandmother when I was 6 years of age because her husband had left her with six kids. They all grew up, got married. She had a really tough life. So I went down to mind her. And instead of minding her, she bought me a pram and I had my first business. And it was to go around and collect secondhand clothes from the poorer people in Cork that she would sell later in the Cold K and at the Mards. And I suppose initially she was calling me her bar of gold because of the fact I brought her stock in trade, which cost nothing. She put away 20% for me. And what it did, it gave me the aspect to challenge. So I always wanted to please my grandmother. I always wanted to be the best that I could be. And she based it into me at a very early years, which would actually come back at later years in relation to how I have done what I've done. And that was always, if you think you can, you will. And if you think you can't, you won't. So it had a profound effect on me. It was baked into me like when your grandmother could hit you. So she never actually had me see anything negative in my life. And then that was supported by my own parents. And I suppose the thing for me, when you're talking about childhood, it's about my attitude and my attributes, about passion, desire, drive, all came from those early days as, humping around the foothills of Cork because we lived on the hill where I'm a Norrie, which is a derogatory statement for poor people in Cork at the time. And yeah, so that gave me drive, passion, desire. So anything that I would set myself about because of my upbringing would give me the same, drive in once I picked it up.
So, unlike many mountaineers, it wasn't something Pat was introduced to at an early age. However, it is clear from listening to him that his grandmother had a massive influence on the type of person he was, and the lessons she and others in his family taught him would prove to be invaluable many years later in the highest mountain ranges in the world. Growing up in the Norrie, the north side of Cork City, is something Pat is extremely proud of and will be a proving ground for many of the attributes he would need as a high altitude mountaineer. Pat was 29 when he was introduced to the mountains by Val Dean and Cork Mountaineering Club.
Yeah, and I suppose from our family's point of view, we would have been, as I say, always striving for the next buck to make the living, right? Okay. So it wasn't until that I became this multi-millionaire from the age of 20 without being able to read or write and then losing it all, which was actually the biggest changing part of my life because now I had lost my self-esteem. I had been under mental pressure and I also was on burnout. Like at this stage, I was married. I had two kids with a wife that loved me, two beautiful kids. And now I was about to lose my mind. And at 29, I remember Val coming into me and his daughter was working downstairs and he said, would I go hill walking? And I thought the man must be nuts because I was a workaholic, not a walkaholic. But him realizing that I was on burnout, also realizing that I had tried to take my life through suicide, he, as part of therapy, asked me to go for a walk up Mangerton. And I didn't want to go. At this stage, as I said, I was thinking to myself, what the bloody hell is he doing here? Does he not realize that his daughter could lose her job? You know? So he forced it upon me. And I never forget the first time I went out, I had a Mercedes car, even though I couldn't read or write, like I was, I had been very wealthy. And I remember parking my car because I couldn't afford to put the petrol in it. And sometimes, like, you have to go through these tough times to appreciate, like burnout, you have to appreciate, like, change the course of life. And so I parked my car up, and I never forget, I got in to a small escort car at the time, and it was €2 or £2, sorry, it was pounds, we all money now, right? And I had my first outing to the mountains, and that was to change my life forever. As I didn't want to go, I thought all these old fogies were, pain in the ass. Look at the colour of the mountains. Oh, isn't this life beautiful? I was saying, what the fuck are they talking about, right? And then something happened as I came into Kerry. Now I live in Kerry. There was a sign, welcome to Kerry. And as we descended the valley and the pops, the Kickle the breasts of the Dana, and they're talking about it, and we're heading for Mangerton. I was completely dismayed until I got out of the car. And here I was at 29, and all these fellas were in their 50s. And we went to walk up Mangerton, and I was absolutely knackered. And then, like, I sat down, I had to sit down, but that's when I actually, the Eucharia, kind of Eucharia moment came to me. Are you here? And it was like, fuck, what's that? The sound of water. Oh, what's that? That's green. Oh, what's that below me? The lakes of Killarney. And as I hunted and puffed, and anyone that has been, like say in Ireland, well, no, Mangerton is, it's a humpback of a mountain, right? Okay, but I was knackered. And when I got to the top, I was so excited because for about a year, everything had gone wrong. And anyone, like the biggest burnout period for people are between 29 and 42. I was on burnout and I had 2 kids. And when I got to the top, I was so excited. And I turned around and I said, what are you doing next week? And they pointed over in the distance, and in the distance there was a bit of snow on the mountain. And they said, oh, that's Carntool over there. It's Ireland's highest mountain. And from that point, I said, can I do it? Right? Because it had actually allowed me to breathe. Right? And even though I still had all the problems, but what I did realize, and I wrote about it, and I often talk about it, about how a point in time or place can actually change your mindset. As I came back up, it said, welcome to Cork. And as I crossed that sign, and for many years afterwards, I was going back into problems. And every time I came across the county bound and it said, welcome to Kerry, it was like therapy. Because I'd taken about 10 Xanax and I was completely calm and collective. And I was also objective based because to do something, it took effort. And that effort blew out the problems that I was having financially and in my business and the banks. And I was able to put my head, my brain on a shelf for those couple of hours, or sometimes it became later, a couple of days, and relax, re-energize myself, and come back with the answers that I required.
Many people, when they go into the mountains, find a sense of calm, a place they can escape to. Pat describes it as having a still mind. I asked him to say more about this.
Well, I think actually getting there, the week before, there was 2 people avalanched or fell off Curve Gully, right? Okay, and then they got killed, right? So for me, the first thing that happened, it was a challenge, and I was in Everest. Now, some people say that sometimes you do things like this in dangerous because it's like the suicidal tendency that I had, to push yourself to that point. But as I was still, mind meant that as I was putting in the effort, and this happened all the time, whether it was Antarctica, like it actually brings me back into my own mind, and I'm at peace. Like it's like, I think Jerry Ryan asked me one time, what was I looking for? I said, I was looking for God. And he said, did you find him? I said, I did. And he said, man, tell us about it. I said, I'm God. And they're looking at, he was listening to me and he was saying, and then I said, yeah, but I'm the devil too. And then it's like, you're the devil and you're God, like, but the tranquility of the mountain, the nature, right? Okay, brings you to within you. And for the first time, as the still mind would have it, the effort that I was making, it didn't matter about the people around me. Like, I'd been honest, actually, I was completely fucked. Like, like I didn't do anything like this before. It was take me years and years I had to get into the state that I actually was comfortable with mountains. But yeah, it gave me a still mind. And it also gave me the mind that I could actually rebuild my business, rebuild my self-esteem. And self-esteem is very important because a lot of people that are suffering from mental anxiety, it's sometimes their self-esteem that's affected. So yeah, and then that gave me the aspect when I reached that cross, which I, have reached, I'd say over 2,500 times since myself. And I still think it back to that day. That stillness that was within me jumped with joy. I had completed my Everest, Karen too. And then jumping with joy, Val turned to me and she said, what's wrong, Pat? What's wrong, Pat? And out of nowhere came the statement, I'm going to climb Mount Everest.
I'm going to climb Mount Everest. A serious jump in ambition. Though from getting to know Pat a little bit, it seems natural that he would think that. I asked him to explain a little bit more about this.
Well, it was like when I left school to become a millionaire at 15. Like I was angry with life. I was angry with my father. Uh, and the purpose was to make money so we'd never be poor because someone hit my mother because my dad wasn't there and he couldn't afford to pay it. So I nearly killed him. So like it was the anger of that I had let myself get to this state and I needed something that would put me on a journey. And my dad always had a saying. He said, like in my earlier years, my dad was my greatest mentor. Like I became a 65-year-old law from there 2 years ago. Um, but he had a great statement. He said, son, he said, dream and dream big, but remember, it's in the following of the dream is where the success lies, not in achieving it. And I suppose from the time I've been six with my grandmother, if you think you can, you will. If you think you can't, you won't. I took up that mantra. So like here I was, like I was so excited to be on my Everest Karen tour. It was the biggest next thing I could think about. I didn't even know what Everest meant, what it took to require to do it, but I knew it was. Everyone said, yes, I've achieved my Everest. So it was just something that came out of my mouth. It wasn't premeditated. It wasn't anything. And then, so like after doing that, that sunk to my subconscious. But what Everest was really was a journey. And this journey was about to take me on a journey that has lasted a lifetime, a journey that has actually given me contentment in my soul, that has actually had me now at near on nirvana because of that moment. And everything changed once I did that. Did I rebuild my businesses? Yes, I did. Did I actually go on to have other businesses? Yes, I have. Have I gone on to um, to have it thoroughly enjoyable. Like I've been from Scotland, Wales, all around Ireland, meeting people that have this passion as well for travel. I've lived with 32 tribes of people, have had the opportunity to open up my mindset to, about 16 different religions. And then to be where I am now is to form the Forever Young Club, the 50 to 90-year-old club, because I'm getting older. I'm an old age pensioner. And I just come back like from 4 Kilimanjaros, like since August. It's November now. Came back for a week, went off to the Himalayas, which is my spiritual home, climbed base camp, went on to Mjatsi, went down to the Annapurnas, and here I am now talking to you. What has happened? It's become my passion. It's become my drive. It's become my life. And my life is about, I started as an apprentice when I started first joining Kerry Mountain Rescue. I then actually became a master. That meant that I became an expedition leader. And I've led expeditions all around the world to the highest, the coldest, the loneliest, most remote places on my planet. And then I have lived with those 32 tribes, trying to study what it is has driven man since the evolution of the species and what it is that drives us to be the best that we can be. And now I'm on a new chapter of my life as I have, moving in from from my 67th year to my 80th year. And even though my oncologist would say, like, Pat, like, how do you keep doing this? Do you not realize like this could go radically wrong for you? And like I have a cancer marker. And then I'd say, like, she said, you're the only one that comes in and hugs their oncologist. And she says, you only stand a 25% chance to get to 80, right? And I said, the reverse of that was when I did Everest first, right? And I said, look, Mary, I'm not afraid of dying. I'm afraid of not living. And what happens with most people that don't do stuff because they're afraid of dying and then they don't live. So that's my attitude to life. I don't know when I'm going to go, but when I go, I hope I have a legacy of being the person that did what he wanted to do, no matter what anyone else thought.
Afraid of not living. I think this is something we all try to say to ourselves from time to time. But to actually live out this mantra in everyday life is something else. Whilst Pat clearly had the drive and determination, everyone needs people to steer them in the right direction. I asked Pat about this idea of having mentors in his early days in mountaineering.
Well, I think that the first mentor was that Valdine. Like he came into my life, and you never know when people are going to come into your life. But when you do have an objective or a goal, it's important that you find that mentor, that person that can speed track you on that journey, right? To me, I was doing an ML course, mountain leadership course here. For people outside Ireland are listening to it, and it was that one of the things I had to do was to, like go out with rescue. And it was like, yeah, I came down here and Kerry Mountain Rescue, which I'm a member of still. Now 30 odd years later, I've kind of been in and out of it, but I believe in giving back. And I came down and I met a guy, two guys actually. Um, I was inside, Con Moriarty had a shop called The Mountain Man. He was one of the most prolific climbers as far as I'm concerned, even though I know a lot of people like may not like Con. Uh, and the same with me, like they may not like me. In the past we've had our conflicts like with different people within our federation. We were never short like of being an accidental rebel. And so Con Moriarty, just giving an instance about the passion, right? I remember going to Con, and Con was younger than me, and I was, can I join Mountain Rescue? So he had a mountain man shop. It was 12 o'clock in the day, and there was another guy called Mike Shea there. He was way younger than Con again, and definitely way younger than me. And they said, "You want to try Mountain Rescue?" And they said, "You have to go through an assessment." And I said, "I don't mind." And they said, could you do it now? And I said, yeah. They were only looking at an excuse now to go climbing, right? So what I never forget about like the passion of these guys, right? Okay. Khan said, right, okay, come on. He grabbed the rope, right? And it was my first time doing a thing called Howling Ridge, which is, one of the best climbs, like I think, in the country, right? And he came out the door. I said, but like, what about the shop? And he said, that'd be okay. And the first thing I seen, he came outside the shop, right, the mountain man, and he turned aside, and it was, be back soon, gone climbing. And Kyle, in actual fact, then became my best friend in the sense of climbing. We went on to do things like he'd ring me up, like, and I'd be in Cork. Like, that became therapy to me, right? This is where I reinvented myself. But he had such a passion, like he could ring me at 12 o'clock. There's a bit of snow in the gully. And then I go like, yeah. And I'd sit in the car. And because I was trying to get back my business as well, this was therapy. And I'd come down, we'd get our ice axes and cramp balls. And he taught me all the skills initially that I learned. But then on top of that, I joined Mountain Rescue, which became the catalyst, like, for me learning lots of more techniques and becoming confident, self-sufficient, um, in life. So like my initial mentors then became the likes of Con and Shay, even though they were younger than me. And like we had a dream one time that we would go on to climb the big mountains, myself and Con. But like that part of like, because Con at some stage, and sometimes I would have held a guilt for moving on. And then Con like didn't, because he found it very hard to take altitude. We never thought that, like when we had these dreams of climbing these big mountains. We just wanted to climb big mountains, not to do a tick off list or not for publicity or anything else like that. It did happen that I became a self-publicist to do what I did. And I have no apologies to make that to anyone. It's allowed me to have the life that I have had. And then myself and Shay, and then I was invited on the first Irish non-led MCI expedition, right, to the Himalaya. And that was the Ama de Blanc. And I was amazed I was invited on it. And that took my dream where I wanted to become a dropped out hippie, because when I was going through all of this period on burnout, and then I found out about Nepal. The one thing I found out about Nepal is where you go to chill out and float. So I wanted to go to Nepal to become a dropped out hippie and do Bar Square smoking pot, right? I thought this would be fucking cool, man, like, except when I got there, I met my mentors. This is another set of mentors, was my Buddhist mentors. And they said, you have too much to offer. And I said, I don't want to become a capitalist anymore. So they said, there's no harm in making money if it's a case you share it. So then I came back out of there, like with my Buddhist mentors, right? Okay, becoming a social capitalist. And that has actually fulfilled my life in payback or give back. Then on top of that, like as I went, I met with other mentors that I had met outside, which had passion about climbing mountains. Like, I learned about the Himalaya that came from the bottom of the sea, pushed to the top of the world. My dream was still Everest, even though it wasn't in sight at that stage. And then um, I learned, like, I became friendly with a lot of the top Sherpas, and then it was like, God, man, these are amazing people. And then I suppose from there, I went on then to be mentored by people in Scotland um, that actually seen my enthusiasm. And the thing with it is, I probably was an enthusiastic donkey, if you know what I mean. A donkey is a person that like isn't trained or like, he's not a thoroughbred, like. And then like I had all these people that were thoroughbreds, like that had been in this for years. And they used classified the Kerry fraternity as rookies. These people that are going away doing these things and they'll kill themselves. But they didn't realize, like, that we had some of the best mentors in the world and some of the best climbers in the world, that I would have taught at the time. And I suppose for me then, with people attacking the likes of Khan, for people I had respected, I became kind of disgruntled with, that we're trying to put down people with dreams. And that's the one thing I always say, if you have a dream or goal in life, just go for it and don't let anyone stand in your way. So at the time, like people were trying to put down Khan's dreams that were, quite nasty, right? So, and like all of that has changed in between. And like, as we go on, I'll tell you why. So that was the mentoring in that. And yeah, so everything I've ever done, I got the best mentors in the world, right? And mainly because I had passion. And most of my mentoring cost me nothing.
Mhm.
Like Borgie Osland, Richard Webber, Matty McNear, Polar. Uh, then you had like Maciek Berbica, one of the most prolific climbers in Russia. Then you had George Gutov. So I was adopted by all of these people. And it didn't cost me anything, you know, um, to do it. And then I started getting on international teams when I couldn't get on Irish teams. And then there was, a bit of a kickback on that. And I remember you used to go mad at the time, right? That how could people stump on your dreams? I went to my dad. And, sometimes when you have a dream or goal in life and then someone stumps on them, you're trying to prove yourself. So my dad said, look, he said, just remember this, all these people are coming from somewhere. So what you do is understand where they're coming from. And if it was you, you might be in the same position. And when they criticize, just say, I understand where you're coming from, but fuck off. Right. And then he said, you can't. One of the great things, look, mentors are amazing. My father was amazing. He used to teach me then, he said, son, he said, you can't demand respect, you've got to earn respect. So for a long time, I said, Dad, when am I going to earn the respect like that I'm doing this because I love it? And he said, it'll take time. And it did. This happened in the passage of time that the naysayers or the critics, would come around and see that this was just not a fella that was coming into this to gain recognition. It was a fella that came in because he loved it. And why did they know I loved it? I'm 67 now and I'm still doing it, but like for a long time. And now I can understand it because it'd be asked me at times, like, and you probably asked the question, like, what do you think about all these fellas climbing Everest and all these people going up the mountain? And like, should it be stopped? And I go, well, for fuck's sake, stop, man. These people have dream goals and aspiration. Who are you or I to stop their dreams?
I have to admit, I find myself agreeing with a lot Pat has to say. As someone who always dreamed of climbing Mount Everest, I like his attitude towards the democratization of the mountain, though I know there are many who don't share this view. The mentors that Pat found in life have had a profound effect on him, and I asked him if he felt lucky in this regard.
Well, I feel I've been fortunate, and that, yeah, lucky. People say you work at your luck, right? I just constantly search for them. I constantly like say, like when I was a bricklayer, right? I went into, like, I came out of my grandmother at 12. I then became an apprentice bricklayer. And, but like I was asked who I wanted to be my master. Like that's the person training me. And of course, it was my alcoholic uncle, Paddy. Why? Because he was the best bricklayer that was there. And my dad always taught me this, he says. And my grandfather as well was great. And I know now, like, people may not like what I'm about to say. He said, like, but first about my uncle, right? Okay, he could lay 750 bricks a day, right?
Hmm.
My next uncle down, because we were all bricklayers, could do 400 bricks a day. So I got mentored. I said, like, my dad was saying, Paddy is the best in Europe. That other uncle is the best in that. Which one do you want to go? I said, Paddy, like, I know you might be wondering, like, why Paddy? Because if you could, like, I think it was about 4 pence a brick or something like that at the time. Well, if I could lay 750 bricks a day, I could make more than this. So I was laying 500. So my mentor at 500. So Paddy, like, would nearly whip me. He would be very angry, like, if I wasn't able to do the stuff. But he taught me how to do it.
Hmm.
And that's the importance of mentors. You actually always try to get a mentor, and you get a mentor that walks the walk. I hate these mentors that just talk to talk.
Walk the walk, don't just talk the talk. Pat is certainly a great talker, but has clearly walked the walk all his life. There is much more to come from Pat about his experience with Mount Everest, from the early rejection for a place on the successful 1993 expedition, to achieving his dream of making it all the way from the summits of Mangerton and Carrantoohill in County Kerry to the top of the world. Pat mentions the Forever Young Club in this episode. If you are 50 or over and want to find out more, go to foreveryoungclub.ie or email jim@patfalvey.com for more details. Many thanks to everyone who has listened to this episode of Why the Mountains. The next episode and the next part of my conversation with Pat Falvey will be available next week. I hope you can join us. Stay safe and stay cool.